So what I've done is I've kind of sized 3.5 inch on the bolts. Works out really well. You can see it's a 5/16 by 18 by 3.5. I buy them in bulk, but that seems to work out really well for most of the material, thickness of material that I'm going to use in the vise. And so by just sticking with that for at least for right now, and that can be switched anytime, but the way that these work is it's good to use a washer, and I'll get fancier and fancier on that. The vise itself is basically somewhat symmetrical. You can use either side, right? But the top part is typically going to be the higher. You can see they're offset, right? And that bolt is going to come through there like that. Then we're going to put a spring on it. This spring really helps a lot. It holds everything in place a lot better. It's easier to get your material in and out, but the material also rests on the spring rather than hitting the threads on the bolt, right? So I'm going to put a washer on here again. Camera up a little higher, and now I have my one bolt coming through there. This is the first time, so it needs a little clean out. And again, the spring goes on. The spring goes on. And then, depending on which side you want to come from, but let's say I want to come from, let's go from the front on this one. So this is a 10.5 inch vise. And that's going to fit, that can fit there. Depending on where you are on the table, like this table is flush. A lot of times I'll overhang it, and then I have a little more room to move downward depending on what material I'm going to work on. Again, the springs come off easy right now, but then that'll go in there. And then using one of these guys, this is the Eklund. It's a 1/4 inch. I've been using, these bolts are pretty readily available, and the nice thing about it is they've got this 1/4 inch head, which to me comes in pretty handy. So now I've got my vise ready to go, and it's just a matter of what I want to work in there. So if I want, now the first setup is always going to take a little bit longer to get your vise bolts set to like your common distance, but once it's done, you can see if you look down in there, now the springs start kicking in, so the material, the working piece, can fit in there. Once it's in, then all you do is snug them a little bit, just like any other vise, right? Snug it and snug it. And then if I'm going to do a whole bunch of these things that are basically the same thickness, now she's good to go in there. And so, for instance, on something like this would be a pretty common application. Like, this is Gorilla Glue, right? Let's say I did a glue up here, and I need to scrape that first. So it's holding it really, really well. Now the piece is in there. That's all scraped. But now I want to sand it. And then as long as I'm sticking with the same similar thickness of material, then the only loosening is just that tiny little bit. Flip it over. Yeah, here. We flip it over onto the other side, snug it a little bit. And again, now we can scrape her, and then we can sand. And we're good to go on that. So this is one of the applications that I use, or going to use it frequently, and that is for clamps. So these are the R&R clamps. So this one could be either vertical, like that, and then if we're going to be doing this a lot, then I would create versions of these that are going to be a little narrower, but then sit vertically, whatever works, okay? This is the other reason I like this particular type of boat. It's the cap screw, is that it has a 1/4 inch. So you can take any 1/4 inch shaft type item, and this is, I don't know, a bit of some sort. In fact, it was a broken drill bit, right? And then I just put it in an impact, and because it's also a 1/4 inch, Then if you have to travel or want to travel long distances with these bolts, then you can just put those in there. And again, keep in mind that down in here, there's that T-nut is buried in there and it's never going to go anywhere. So by lifting those up high enough, I can get a couple more clamps underneath there. I can set those clamps up wherever I want. It'll turn. Yep, it'll turn in there. And then I can put them out on the edge, on the outside like that. And then now once I've got them in position, snug them down. There we go. So now I've got my clamps in there. I want them a little bit loose anyhow, but if I don't want them to be loose at all, I can use these rubber shims. These little guys. Okay, now I can put my shim in there. You can do it the same with a couple of the other ones. That's one way to do it. Okay, so they're shimmed. And again, I like my vices in there somewhat loose normally, because then that allows me to slide them over from one side to the other if I need to, but now I can tighten that up. There. Shove that shim in a little further. So now you've got that. And then now the vices, these are the clamps. And by the way, if you notice, they're over the top of the other vise. So that vise never had to be removed. And then this is where I would be putting in, like for glue ups, I'd be putting in pieces of material there and doing my glue ups. And again, they're really, really stable because they're all kind of lined up with the bench. So that's that kind of clamp, and that's that kind of use for it. Okay, again, this needs some fine tuning yet, but these are the short bar pipe clamps, right? But the nice thing about this, again, because this is mounted so well to a table, whatever the table you happen to have, it's mounted so well, it can handle a lot of cantilevering. So these are only, I think they're 12 or 18 inch, 16 inch pipe clamps, but you can use, these are the ponies. You can take the same one and just put longer pipe on it. So you could basically extend out here another foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, and now you have a platform for some pretty wide stuff, you know, okay? And what I'm doing, again, I'm just getting starting on these, but same thing. You're basically going to use these to hold your clamps into position, so now you can extend these to wherever you want. And again, they reach up over the top of, I've got this one mounted on backwards, there you go, okay. But they reach up over the top of this other vise that's tucked slightly below it. And so now you have access to the pipe clamps as well. And again, there's all kinds of lengths you could use, different directions and everything else, but pretty cool. And then if you have this type of clamp, now these are the smaller, I think I don't know if they're ponies or what, but this is the kind of clamp, and I don't use these kinds of clamps hardly at all, so I'm not going to set it up for that. But for right now, I'm just going to temporarily set that up like that. And then the same thing with this one. And this, again, everybody's going to jury rig their own way. This is the infrastructure, right? So now you have that, and you have that, again, that ability to slide these back to where you want them. This one does bump in here. I'd probably remove this, and that's the sweet thing about this, is just it's in the way, you just take it out. All right, now this one has the springs on it. I don't want to lose the springs. I have one there. But now we just solved for that issue. So now we can go there, and then you can put your workpiece in here. Right? Again, you're going to have to tweak a few things based on the type of clamps that you have. But that handles these small bar clamps. So we're good to go on that. So then I do use these more. And so then you can put these guys in there. Basically what you're going to end up doing is using this portion for the other end of the clamp instead of the part that you would normally use. You don't have to take the bolts completely out, but so now then I can stand that guy up a little bit, stand that guy up a little bit, and again by using this, there, put those where you want them. And I don't think you even need the slots. Just look at that. That is amazing. Okay, now again, this could be, these are the jets and they're what, 24 inches or something like that. So there's no reason that you can't go to like the long one. So in fact, I'll even do that. Let me take this apart. Right, you're thinking, seriously? These are 48 inches. These are 48-inch Bessies. So let's just have at it. Seriously, look at this. It's really as stable as whatever table it is that you mount it to now. We went to a festool, you're going to get, you can do the same thing. They're going to mount, this is going to mount on the festool the same way that it mounted on here with the bolts coming up from underneath through the dog holes. It'll be on there, but it's going to be a lot more solid. Or if you have a heavy duty workbench of your own, then you would do the same thing. If you have to adapt a few holes or something to it, great. But now you have that, and look at the cantilever on that. Now you could do this, you could kind of do this on a kitchen table. So let's just, so again, you're using the vise board in the back to hold this piece, which is a slab, good, almost 3 inches thick. Then I can run that guy up to there. And again, the movement is not from the vices, it's not from the vise, the MikroVice, it's actually from the table. It's that plastic table that's moving. But anyways, you still have a very workable area. So if you're going to be doing some sanding, some drilling, right? Whatever it is you want to do to this piece, you could even router it if you want a platform to run your round over. But more importantly, this would be used for something else. So this is where you could be doing a glue up, right? Now you've got your clamps doing all the work for you. And that wobble isn't even going to hurt because it's the clamps that are doing all the work for you. But now you have a great platform for doing glue ups. Now this one is not cantilevered over the edge, but this is an earlier version of mine. And this is where I use them a lot. And that is I cantilever it over the edge of the, like on this one, this case, the festool table. And then what this does is it gives me ability to work the end grains of wood, because then I can now go down into a piece like that. So now I have a working platform that's in a good position to be able to do end grain work. Okay, as you can see, I get into some 45s. Now this is a future version of this thing, and this is my fishing stuff, right? But I've got a table, I call it a micro table, and it's basically a table that is above something else, and then I like doing a 45 or a 30 on them. You can see I did one back there as well, and that way it brings that extra table further back. I did it here. The micro bench that I did, build a micro bench from two stair treads. That one is an instructable micro, M-I-K-R-E-O. But you can see there I get into the 45s. And then to do that, I need to mount some of my hardware on there, but it's an angle. So let's just kind of cover how that would work. So again, I use these a lot when I'm camping because then I can mount the MikroVice onto anything. So the spacing in there is such that I have basically a pretty good working angle on it. And then again, I'm going to tighten this, snug it up using the wrench, right? That's an Eklund 1/4 inch. I snug that up. Now I have a good solid, and this could be, 2 feet, 3 feet longer. And on these, what I do is I mount this is a template or a jig. There, for instance, I'm using a hinge bit. That's a 7/64, and I can use that jig to put my 3 holes in there. Again, I've got a really stable platform here with the MikroVice. Actually, I have to drill a second hole in there in the center, so I've got a good stable platform for that. Right? Then I can put my piece of hardware on there, put that in there, and away she goes for mounting. So that's how you can see how the vise is used for that kind of stuff. Done with one end, put it back in, lock her down. That's it. And again, it's all done with that little guy. And now I can continue working on that piece. And again, and then you got this slot in between here. If you had a wider piece, like a 12, 14, 16-inch piece, again, tall, but you want to work the end of that, now you have a place to work that. So then you have all these mounting options. Okay, so in the MikroVice, again, we have these holes along the side, right? And each of those has it's either for the vise, but those same holes are lined up to go with these U.S. Generals. They're made, Harbor Freight has these, and then there's other companies that make them and sell them. They're probably similar, but they have a hole pattern. Here, there's already a bolt, and then there's reinforcement right here. Same thing over here, and you can see what I did there. This is an earlier version. It's, I think, 11.5 inches across, and look at how that cantilevers. And then I even have a Rikon bandsaw on that, mounted to that. And then, but it's just those 2 bolts here that go through, and then those would end up matching up with these 2 outers right here. So we're all set to go on that, and then you don't even have to fiddle with a nut on the other end. You just put the bolt right in. Probably takes about a minute to install it. You can see again here how I'm using these. Now this is an older version again of the vise, and you can see how I have a space in here, but it's all cantilevered, right? Then this one here, same thing. It's a deeper version, but the one that I'm doing right now, the smaller one, vise, will actually do the same thing because it can handle the cantilever. So it's mounted the same way. And then this one I set up basically to have a bunch of clamps on. I have an area for storage below. And then this is the one one of those where I have the risers going up. Again, I like them to go up back at an angle so that upper tray isn't in the way. And then this one is typically I've got 4 or 5 drivers set up there. They all just sit there. They're all nice and handy, ready to go. In fact, I even went a little further, added a second tray on there, a third, and then now there I've got the cup holders and the cell phone and all this other USBs and pencils and stuff. I could even go up another layer or 2 if I want. So then some more mounting options. I have a lot of these rolling carts. They're the yellow, the painter's cart. And the only thing is the spacing is 27.5 inches, and the MikroVice and all my stuff is only 21 inches. But all you got to do is take a 2x4 and run it from here going across, and then make 2 holes that are spaced the same as the MikroVice, which you kind of see what I did here. This is my chop saw stand. I took one of those yellow ones, adapted it. By the way, this works really, really well. I had to cut that off, but now I have my miter saws mounted on there. But here's one of the earlier, very, very early versions of the micro vise, and then it gets mounted up there. So you've got a place, and then you could put 2 or 3 of them up there. You could put a version of it, but now they roll and go with you. Here's another one where I mounted the drill press on it. And then again, the nice thing about doing that is there's that double layer of steel right there. On these, it's just a matter of taking off the handle. That they have 2 bolts, or you don't even mount them. If you buy one of these, you have to assemble it anyhow. You just don't mount the handle. And then, but the holes match up to the micro bench. In fact, here, then I went the other direction on this one. I adapted it to the other side. You can see I put a drill press up there. Now that is a MikroVice, a very early version of it. And I've got a couple more of those. I've got this one here that I use. Again, I've got the drill press mounted on there. So I bought all these different $80, $90 drill presses all ready to go.